Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with a link format version of Traptrix, updated of course with the brand new cards from Decode the Duelist and our lovely Proxy Dragon that we recently got from the Megatons. This was definitely one of those strategies that I knew had so many different potential ways that you could build it. You could go with like a Pot of Duality, Card of Demise type of a raw draw trap deck, or you could do more of like a combo type of special summon deck, and the latter is the one I ended up settling for because as much as I really like the power of, you know, Duality and Card of Demise, it just limited me in what I was able to do, and it just wasn't quite as fun and dynamic, I guess, as this variant of the deck. So, you know, both viable options here, but I definitely want to showcase this version because it's the one that I'm having a lot more fun with, and it borrows a lot of really cool engines that you may have seen elsewhere, and it's really cool how much the synergy allows the theme to all come together despite, you know, putting together a bunch of disparate parts. So we're gonna of course focus on our Traptrix monsters, but we're also gonna go and throw in some other control cards and some new link support as well for this explosive deck. It's just so fun, you guys don't want to miss it. So as usual, I'll be doing a type of let's build deck profile, so you'll see all my thought processes, you know, why cards are in here, and then at the end I do an alphabetical profile. But if you want to just see that, I put the link with the timestamp in the description box below and as the pinned comment, so you can go and click that. And then if you have any questions, you know, you can always ask or check the middle part of the video, and then a lot of those questions will hopefully be answered as to like numbers for things, why things are in here, and what purposes they serve. So let's get started. First off, I want to do a very quick primer on the Traptrix card. So as you might expect, Traptrix has a name that reflects the trap hole cards that they're able to use, and so they're kind of like a control type of deck, and that's what I really like. We can take advantage of the Earth attribute, the level 4 plant or insect typing here to really make a cohesive kind of a control strategy, which is why I really love these cards. But we'll go ahead and talk very briefly about these monsters here. So essentially, we'll start off with Mantis. This one's new from Decode the Duelist. All these guys, I already mentioned, they're Earth level 4 monsters. They're either plants or insects, but fun fact, they have a stat sum of 2,800. So, for example, 1,500, 1,300. Just like a fun design choice here. And her ability is just tutor any of your Traptrix straight from your deck upon normal summon, which is pretty good. Biggest thing is you gotta find some way to get that monster into play, because of course you're limited to one normal summon per turn, and her effect only triggers on normal summon. So something we have to keep in mind in terms of going forward. I know a lot of people didn't like Mantis at first, myself included, just because it seems like a really tall order to have to get another normal summon out to reliably play this card, but there are a lot of fun ways you can do that, so we'll be doing that. And then her trigger effect is actually kind of weird. It's not even a trigger effect, actually. Unlike the other Traptrix, she has a quick effect that lets you just go and take one of your set back row and add it back to your hand, and that lets you go and play around Diana's downside, where she banishes a trap hole that you recycle if you fail to use it in a turn cycle. But you know, it comes up every once in a while. It's not the best effect in the world, but you could play mind games with your opponent or something as well if, you know, column play becomes a big thing. Actually, that might be one of the best ways to use that coming up. We have Yugioh, which is the recruiter for your trap holes, and the reason this is better, as many people know from 2014 Hat era, is you can set as many trap cards as you want per turn as long as you have the zones for them. So Yugioh is very nice for that. 1600 attack is very powerful when you power it up with Mrs. Radiant to its 2100, and then her trigger effect just MSTs a card your opponent controls, so that can get rid of pendulum scales or defenses, or it can just cut your opponent's supply line off by getting rid of their field or continuous spells as well. So very useful all around for a free plus. Diana is 1711 for its stats, and it triggers a lot of your Traptrix, because on normal summon you can revive one from your grave in defense position, so can't go all out with attacks with both of them, but 1700 is already pretty good for attacking if you choose to keep your monsters on the board instead of as materials. And Diana, again, triggers your Yugioh, so you can get a +1 and then use those as materials for either a Mrs. Radiant or a Rafflesia or something else in your extra deck, so that's pretty good. And then the trigger effect on Diana is you can go and set one of your used trap holes from the graveyard, and then if it's not used in a turn cycle, you end up banishing it. But again, has a little bit of synergy there with Mantis, which lets you do that. Overall, Diana is one of the best things that you have here. I've always found it difficult to play at 3, but when you Mantis into Dionea, you'll probably have some trap holes to soften up your opponent's plays. Then if this dies, you just Dionea it back to have a 1-card play. So ends up being pretty playable because of how searchable it is, and the fact that Mantis is a monster that'll probably die on its way to getting you your Dionea to make that play. So, you know, it's not quite as elegant as summoning Mantis sends it to the grave to summon Dionea and you get another normal summon or something, but, you know, you still get a lot of use out of the 2 cards. Traptrix is the one I don't like playing that much. It's 18-10, so you would think, oh, that's pretty good, you know, in terms of stats, and it really is. But really, it doesn't do anything proactive. It's unaffected by normal trap holes, which I guess all these guys aren't, which is pretty good. But then its other effect is you can activate normal traps from your hand, normal trap holes specifically, so could be useful in like a heavy trap hole deck, but I just don't really see a point in that. And then its third effect is really useful in the side deck, so you can go and make it so the activation and effects of your normal trap cards can't be negated. So Denkoseka doesn't negate the activation of your sets, so unless there's some ruling against it, I do believe you can't really get around that. But you can get around Jinzo, Naturia Barkion, Royal Decree, those types of things, and because it's a continuous effect here, your opponent can't even play 7 tools or wiretap to get around that effect. So pretty interesting here. Really, again, best thing in the side, because it's an additional Traptrix monster, so you will have some synergy with the rest of the theme, but it'll help you address issues that your opponent might throw at you if that particular deck does so. But, you know, I don't really like playing this one in the main because I just don't think it does enough. Nepenthes is a card I like teching at 1 though, because it is a plant, so it's searchable by Lonefire in defense position with its mighty 2000 defense, or you can bring it with Dionea, which actually it's one of like the best Traptrix monsters to bring back stat-wise for that. And then you're basically able to go and when you play a normal trap hole, trigger this effect to search a Traptrix monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it once per turn. So it is reliant on you playing another trap hole. That's why I like playing 1, but you have so much ability to fetch it when you need. Just have it sit there, and then, you know, even if you cheat it once to get the free plus here, you're getting a lot of value out of this. You can make it into another monster the following turn, and it's just a very fun utility card that I like having. Plus, when you play triples of each of these and you play one of these, I did like the number of Traptrix. I didn't want to really go fewer than 10 if at all possible, just because in testing, you are going to have times where you manipulate your hand, you want to use Dionea immediately with something you discarded, so Nepenthes just helps in terms of counts, and it ended up being better than the Atrax. Then, the last thing here is the Rafflesia. So this is a fun, generic Xyz monster. It's an Earth rank 4 that is a plant, and it has a stat line of 300, 2500, and then it has 4 effects, which is 1 for each of the classic Traptrix monsters here, if we put Atrax instead of Mantis. So, first effect, it's unaffected by any trap effects while it has Xyz material. And the cool thing is, yeah, you could Solemn Strike this upon summon, but once it's been on the field and it has its materials, nothing can touch it. So Torrential becomes one-sided. If your other guys are all Traptrix, you have Solemn Strike can't even negate its effect again once it's on the board. There are a lot of things that this thing is safe from, and it's just so great for that reason. And it extends that protection to your other Traptrix because it has 2 effects that say none of your Traptrix can die in battle or card effect, and then none of your Traptrix monsters can be targeted. Rafflesia does not protect itself with those abilities, but it does have a 4th ability that lets you copy the effect of a trap hole from your deck whenever the activation timing of 1 is met. So you can just go and bottomless straight from your deck, never have to draw it, don't even have to search it with Myrmilio, which gives you a lot of freedom in what you play from your deck. And then you can even use it offensively with something like Treacherous Trap Hole that lets you go, going second, just bust up 2 of your opponent's monsters, snag the free plus, and then continue making your plays when your opponent's board has been demolished. So lots of really great support roles. The only weakness of Rafflesia is the fact that it doesn't do much attacking on its own, but it's such a phenomenal support card that it really brings this theme together, and it's always been something that I want to take advantage of, and I think with Mantis in this following build, we finally have that. So let's move on to the rest of the deck here. There's a really fun Preta plant engine that you might have seen in other decks that we could put in here. There's just so much synergy, and it basically launches into 2 really cool combos that really inspired me to play this deck over the Card of Demise variant. So the first combo starts off with the Preta Plant, Ophrys. You could, of course, play Lonefire to get that into play as well, and there are a lot of cards you can discard with this to make the combo even better, but for now, just the core. We bring out our Darlingtonia Cobra, which adds Brilliant Fusion to our hand for a bit later. This is really cool because now we have 2 monsters for the generic rank 3 MX Saber Invoker, who lets us detach a material to summon an Earth monster from our deck. So we'll choose our Thousand Blades, Heroic Challenger Thousand Blades, and with 2 Earth monsters, that lets us, of course, go for our Mrs. Radiant, which blanket powers up all our Earth monsters in this deck, but also opens up 2 zones, which is perfect for our Brilliant Fusion. So then, get rid of Garnet, get rid of Trick Clown, and that basically lets us go Seraph Knight in this zone. Brings back Trick Clown here, and then we end up taking a bit of damage, which actually means that we can get the Thousand Blades out on the field. And the coolest thing with this is we have an additional normal summon left that we could still use, and without even doing any additional summons, we have our Rafflesia on the board to kickstart everything within our deck. Then depending on what we can normal summon here, you could do a bunch of really cool things as well. But this is a key combo that you definitely want to have in this deck. The second combo here is something that lets you get Naturia Beast at will turn 1, which is pretty good. So basically all you need is a Brilliant Fusion, some access to Glow Up Bulb, so it could be the Lonefire Blossom, and then any level 4 monster that's Earth that you can normal summon. So many of these are in the deck that I'm not really even going to call this a 3-card combo. There is some complex math thing that it'll get you the exact probability, but it happens pretty much anytime you draw the pair of these. What you want to do is Brilliant Fusion, which will let you summon your Seraph Knight by sending to the graveyard the Trick Clown and Gem Knight Garnet. So we put that here. Trick Clown comes back for free, so we could put this here just so, you know, if we go Proxy Dragon or something, we'll have it as like a free material there. But essentially now you want to use Seraph Knight's extra normal summon to somehow get a Glow Up Bulb onto the board, and then we can use the 2 Earth monsters to go into Mrs. Radiant. From here, order doesn't matter all that much, but you're basically going to bring back Glow Up Bulb for free, and then you can go and normal summon whatever Earth monster. If it's Myrmilio, great, you get to bolster your field even more, but this gives you 2 options. You could go Trishula with all of these, or I like going, especially turn 1, turn the 2 of these into Naturia Beast over here, and then, based on what other cards you've drawn, like trap cards, or, you know, if it was Myrmilio as an example again, you're able to bolster this field that's already got a 2700 attack Naturia Beast, and then, you know, whatever else that you happen to have in your hand. So definitely something you want to know because you want the access to Beast whenever you can. With those discussions out of the way, it's time to build the deck from the ground up. So we'll start off with the Preta Plant engine of 3 Ophrys Scorpio and 1 Darlingtonia, mainly because Darlingtonia you definitely don't want to draw because it's pretty much useless in your hand, and even if you happen to draw the 1 copy, you're only losing use of the Ophrys Scorpios. You still have all the other cards in the Brilliant Fusion engine that will function, so it was the most expendable in my opinion, so we'll play just 1 of that. And then we're playing 3 Lonefire Blossom, not only for the Ophrys Scorpio play, but also because you have half of your Traptrix or plants as well, and you can tech in some other plants for some nice combos. So increased consistency, toolbox really well. It's just a phenomenal card for this deck. Our Preta Plant engine, of course, sets up our Invoker, which gets us a Heroic Challenger Thousand Blades, and that lets us go for Mrs. Radiant, all while taking advantage of extra zones for a Brilliant Fusion. You do want to play 3 because even though you're searching it, if you do draw it, we'll play Instant Fusion in just a bit to basically make it even better to draw because you'll be able to expand your plays with an additional useful card. We have our Garnet as our Earth high attack level 4 monster that technically does synergize with the deck for the Brilliant Fusion, and then we have Trick Clown because that triggers our Heroic Challenger, and that lets us go for a free Traptrix Rafflesia, which is the centerpiece of our deck. Gem Knight, Seraph Knight giving us an additional normal is quite nice as well because technically the Ophrys play does make us use that summon in the first place, so you're not really gaining a normal summon in terms of like being able to play additional Traptrix monsters, but you are able to put more cards on the board once you've established the Traptrix Rafflesia for free and then gotten some other zones open, so that's why that's there. And then, to kind of fix things up, I do like playing additional copies of these because Darlingtonia, again, it only screws over your Ophrys if you draw it. But if you draw one of these, this is your only light, this is your only Gem Knight, you're going to have your entire Brilliant Fusion engine be dead, on top of the Preta Plant engine being really, really lackluster if you draw any of these. So I definitely like the 2 of these. Yeah, you don't want to draw them, but this one you can go and use with like Ophrys Scorpio anyway, and this thing is a level 4 Earth again, so it synergizes it enough that it's not the worst thing in the world. I'd rather draw these on occasion than not be able to use the Brilliant Fusion engine. That's what it came down to in testing. I think it's worth it in a 40 card deck. Just to note, if you're playing Trick Clown and you're like, oh, I can use this with Ophrys, don't use this effect unless you either can't get Heroic Challenger to the graveyard with the MX Saber play, or you already have it loaded, because otherwise you won't be able to trigger that free Heroic Challenger, because yeah, that's just a pro tip there from testing out. Goblinburg is interesting because it does synergize with the Traptrix monsters by triggering all of their, summon effects, their special summon effects. You get an additional monster out, so even though you're clogging with normal summons in this deck, this helps enable your plays. And then as an Earth Warrior monster, it has the synergy of basically doubling as a target for MX Saber Invoker. Yeah, that card's in the extra, so you're not necessarily making a card in your deck dead, but your engine that you really want to resolve will see a lot more play successfully if you play the Goblinburg. So I definitely think the 1 here is really powerful. And then Instant Fusion isn't necessary. You could just fetch a Brilliant Fusion once you've already drawn one, and you'll be able to deck thin that way. But I really do like Instant Fusion for Carbonala as a level 4 Earth monster, because then you have an additional monster that's synergized with everything, and basically if you draw Brilliant Fusion to begin with, and you have your Ophrys combo, you just have an additional card to keep building up. So it really does expand your combos, and because of how consistent it is, I think it's worth the extra spot. Traptrix, we're playing the Dianeas, which of course combo nicely with the Mantis, and then we're playing the 3 Myrmilios as well. Basically with the additional summon off of Seraphonite, a lot of these become more viable within a turn, if not the same turn that you resolve the Brilliant Fusion. Nepenthes, again, it's a plant, so you can bring off of Lonefire, or you can revive it with the Dianea, and then it just gives you an additional Traptrix monster, so that if you Ophrys one of the Traptrix, you can summon your Dianea, gives you 2 monsters, makes it a lot easier to make bigger plays. Of all the trap holes, I think Treacherous is the mandatory one because it is a free trigger as long as you don't have traps in your grave, but you're summoning Myrmilio and or Rafflesia every single game turn 1, pretty much, no questions with this deck. So having the ability to not only pop your opponent's cards defensively or offensively, but also being able to just trigger this at any time and attach a material, that material control is extremely important, as you'll find. So I really see no reason not to play this thing. You could side it out in some weird scenarios where it's like really terrible in a matchup, but then you'll suffer from not having the flexibility that this card offers. Again, it's never dead because you're always either searching this card with Myrmilio or playing it straight from the deck with Rafflesia, so that concern of, having a trap in the grave won't matter. You're gonna resolve this first, pretty much, or at least that should be your goal. Then, these 3 trap holes are pretty much all variations on a theme. Bottomless is the classic, gets rid of monster or monsters, so it lets you get pendulum monsters out of the way, and that's true with Floodgate Trap Hole and Time Space as well, but they all have different things. Spinning to the deck is powerful, so you don't have to deal with things. Putting things face down until you're ready to deal with them is pretty nice as well. So all just more range given by playing one of each of the trap holes. And then this card basically is in here because it deals with monster effects. You could try Void Trap Hole, but with Link monsters and the impending release of Exciton Knight from the Forbidden and Limited list, I didn't want to have something that didn't catch everything that was weaker. So, really the trap holes you can tweak a bit, but I found these few to be the best for me. It'll all depend on what you're playing against. That'll determine what you should be playing. And of course, you can always side other options or other quantities as well. Proxy Dragon, now this one's fun because if you have a Rafflesia with your Trick Clown attached to it, and then you have the Heroic Challenger in the grave, you can just go and turn the Rafflesia with something else into a Proxy Dragon, turn 2, and then that lets you go bring the 2 level 4s back for free and go for a second Rafflesia and open up another zone for no normal summon or anything, so that's an extremely powerful play. You probably should play the second Rafflesia anyway in this deck, but you can use the Rafflesia basically with Proxy Dragon, get it recharged with materials to do full support of your team, and then you have Proxy Dragon to open up an additional zone as well thanks to that Trick Clown combo. So very powerful there. I like the Glow Up Bulb because it's an Earth monster, you can go misses with it, and on top of that, the fact that it comes back for free as a tuner monster means we can make use of some of the best synchros in the game. We're playing Naturia Beast because we have so many level 4 Earth monsters, that's why Carbonala for that instant fusion as well, and then Trishula, basically if you have Dianea for 2 free monsters or just happen to accumulate 2, you can go and Trishula off of the Glow Up Bulb at any time, which is very devastating as well, and Nat Beast gets even more powerful with the Mrs. Radiant, so you're able to really put a hard lock on your opponent, which is very good because you protect your trap holes from removal and all this stuff, so definitely a powerful card you want to look into. And then once we have the synchros settled, because I think these are the best two options, you don't necessarily need any more. I'd rather go into the rank 4 toolbox. So we're going to deal with the graveyard with Abyss Dweller, deal with the field with Castel, kind of a mix of both with the Utopia package where we can get rid of annoying monsters that trigger in the graveyard or the field or whatever, and this basically just does a lot of damage as well. Then I like a second Mrs. Radiant because it's like Psychics when I shared it the other day. If you have Dionea in your graveyard and Mrs. Radiant goes down, you fetch the Dionea and use that to summon your second Mrs. Radiant from your extra deck without ever having to worry about, do you have another copy? So it makes it so you always have Mrs. Radiant at the ready. You're always going to have that attack boost, always going to have the extra zones, and basically because you have another Earth monster in this deck that enables a 1-card Mrs. Radiant, you probably should be playing the 2 Mrs. Radiants. It's definitely worth it. And sometimes you even just bring out a second Mrs. Radiant for an additional power boost, because if you give 1,000 attack to all your monsters, even the Mrs. Radiants become 2,400 despite one of them not really pointing to anything. And then, your other monsters just go through the roof, so it's definitely worth having the second copy. And then Decode Talker doesn't always come up necessarily as part of a specific combo, but it does enable some weird plays and does have a nice control effect as well. Usually you don't care if you give your opponent the zone because you have trap cards to stop them from doing anything, so it's a nice little combo piece in this deck in particular. You minimize the risks and really maximize the rewards of having an additional generic monster that lets you go and open 2 zones, so like use Trick Clown or whatever. Then I like the full Solemn Brigade because trap holes are pretty good and you have access to any of them pretty much at any time, but these are just so powerful. Like the life point payment is worth it. You have 1 instant fusion and a Trick Clown. Like, yeah, these cost life, but it's going to win you the game within a couple turns if you see these, so you definitely want to have the power that these cards bring to help secure your board so you can just ride that momentum from the beginning towards a victory. Imperial Order is pretty similar. The nice thing, though, is versus Naturia Beast, you don't have to set up an additional summon of a glow-up bulb to access it. So Naturia Beast is good because you don't have to draw it, but you do have to have an additional summon of glow-up bulb in some way, shape, or form. Imperial Order kind of gets around that. Yes, it's limited, but if you draw it, it protects your board without having you to go into the extra deck for the Naturia Beast. You don't have to fandangle a glow-up bulb on the board. You can just, just protect your board on top of everything you already did, just for 1 card. So that's why that's there. Sacred Tree. Now, this is a fun tech I chose at 1. Basically, it has 2 effects, but we only care about the second. It lets you tribute either an Earth plant or an Earth insect monster to summon the opposite level 4 monster from your deck. So that's really cool because that means you can go and tribute the insect side of the Traptrix to summon the plants, or vice versa. And you can even tribute random things like Glow Up Bulb for free things as well. So, based on how easy Glow Up Bulb is to bring back, this is a very nice, fun tech piece for that. And if you play 1, I figured you'll get a nice, consistent supply line of monsters whenever you want, but at the same time, it'll never really hurt you because it won't clog at 1. You could try building more around this if you'd like, but I just think 1 is a very safe number. It maximizes how useful it is without necessarily hurting you at all, so definitely like that. And then Riga Key, obviously it's a power card, but the important thing to note here is you're playing a lot of preventative traps. You're playing trap holes and solemns, and yes, solemns could get rid of some things that are already established, but for the most part, if your opponent has something, unless they trigger what you're doing, you're not going to be able to get rid of it if it's on the board. So you want a Riga Key so you can clear your opponent's board and then stop any new threats they bring out, or you could just push for game with all the special summoning that this deck is able to do. If you watched the video in its entirety, thanks! Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the creation of this deck as much as I did putting it together and testing it out. We'll start off with the main deck here. So we have a Glow Up Bulb, Goblinburg, Heroic Challenger Thousand Blades, triple Lonefire Blossom, double Performage Trick Clown, 1 Darlingtonia Cobra, and then triple Ophrys Scorpio. We have triple Dionea, triple Mantis, triple Myrmilio, and then just a single Traptrix Nepenthes. Then we have double Gemknight Garnet, and then for spells we have triple Brilliant Fusion, 1 instant fusion, a Riga Key, and then for traps, Bottomless Trap Hole, Floodgate, Imperial Order, Naturia Sacred Tree, 3 Solemn Strikes, a Solemn Warning, Time Space Trap Hole, Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare, and then a Treacherous Trap Hole for a 40-card main here. And then for our extra, we have, for synchros, just Naturia Beast and Trishula off of that Glow Up Bulb. We have an Invoker. We have for rank 4s, Abyss Dweller, Castel, double Traptrix Rafflesia, and then the Utopia package with the Lightning. Then for Link monsters, we have double Mrs. Radiant, Proxy Dragon, Decode Talker, and then for fusions, we play a Carbonala Warrior for the instant, and then a Gem Knight Seraph Knight for the Brilliant fusion. That's the end of this video, but if you enjoyed it, I encourage you guys to leave a like and share it so we can spread the video to as many other people who may enjoy the content as well. If you like this series, you can see more of it by clicking the video annotation on the right, or you can click the one on the left to see the last video I did. And if you really enjoyed what you saw today, then I invite you guys to subscribe to JDGaming to see more Yu-Gi-Oh! Updates. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.